Hey, hey, this is Sarah Mel. Welcome to Phases of the Womb podcast. Thank you for joining. I am super excited to get this rolling and just see what it turns out to be. I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know what it's going to turn into, but I'm really excited to be doing it because I'm recording this after I've already done some interviews with people, and I'm just letting y'all know it is going to be very entertaining, very informational, and I'm having a really good time having these conversations with people. So hopefully you guys enjoy it too. So this first episode, I just wanted to introduce myself, introduce my podcast, introduce, who I am, what I do, why I felt the need to create a podcast in the first place. So my name is Sarah, like I said, and I've been a registered nurse for the past 8 years. I've worked in labor and delivery for the past 7. I think it's 7 this year. And I've been a certified nurse midwife for a year and change now. And I'll finally be starting my first job as a midwife this summer. So that's super exciting. I didn't immediately go into it. One, because pay. Like, I would just be transparent. It wasn't doing what it needed to do. And I have been a travel nurse since 2018. I had some financial goals that I wanted to, do. And I've done those, and now I'm ready. So, I don't know. But I want to start by talking about what a midwife is, or what a midwife is to me. So when I first started in labor and delivery, I had the opportunity to work with 2 midwives, and with my preceptor being a doula and having that experience with people who wanted to birth naturally or wanted to birth with a midwife, we got a lot of the patients that had the midwives. So I got to experience those type of births and those type of situations. And to be completely honest, prior to this, I didn't really know what a midwife was. And surprisingly, my clinical instructor in nursing school for my maternity rotation was a midwife. And when I remember her saying that, and I don't know, I didn't even think about it. And she was a Black woman. Honest to God, I didn't think too far into it, because at that point I wasn't sure I wanted to even work in labor and delivery. So it wasn't even a thing that crossed my mind. But now, after working with midwives and experiencing midwives all across the country as a travel nurse, what I think a midwife is a provider that supports a woman and her family or birthing person in a natural physiologic pregnancy and birth. So I'm a certified nurse midwife, and there are different types of midwives. I won't touch on all of that because it can get very muddy with all of that. A lot of things aren't super regulated or super standardized across the country. So I'm just going to touch on what I know. And as a certified nurse midwife, I know that in Louisiana, they work typically in the hospital settings or in birth center settings. And right now, as far as I know, the closest birth center is, well, to me, because I'm in New Orleans, is in Baton Rouge, which is about an hour or so away. So midwives support what they call a physiologic birth, basically allowing your body to do what your body is going to do, not intervening as if pregnancy or labor is something that needs to be medicalized or intervened on. Now, that's not saying that there aren't certain situations where interventions need to happen. I'm not saying that. I've worked in the hospital. I've seen things. I've heard things. There are instances where, there needs to be intervention. I get that. That's why a lot of these things exist, because there have been situations where there's a need for intervention and things weren't in place or things didn't exist before to intervene. But based on my experience, I believe that most pregnancies and most deliveries can happen in a physiologic way. The issue is that once you get into the hospital, there are so many things in place that lead to interventions, that lead to other things, that lead to bad outcomes. Again, I'm not saying that that's all situations. And honestly, being back in the South and seeing how sick people are just in general, I know that it's not all situations and that interventions are necessary. But do I believe that most situations can be handled with a midwifery approach? I do. I 100% believe it can be. Like, I know a lot of this can be controversial. I already know how this is, but midwifery care was the common care prior to birth being moved to the hospital. There were community midwives who were responsible for their community. When somebody was in labor, your great grandma, your grandma, whoever it was, went down the street and was there for people's birth. Now, we know, as a society, we know that there were some bad outcomes. There were some bad outcomes. But I think that based on what I was taught in school and what I've done my own research on, midwifery got criminalized when the medical system figured out that they could capitalize on birth and labor, etc. When you look at a bill, it's insane to me that you get a bill for having a baby. It is insane. Do I think that providers should be paid for their services? Absolutely. I am one. I need to survive. I get it. But the amount of money that you spend to go into a hospital and get all these interventions done is insane. Like, the fact that people pay monthly on these bills to have kids it's insane to me. It is insane. So basically, like I said, midwifery care was normal. Like, everybody had a midwife. Everybody birthed at home. Doctors didn't want no parts, because what's fun about, going in and, sitting there and coaching a woman through labor just to, deliver a baby and go about your business? That's not fun for, providers who want to do surgery. That's not fun. And I'm not saying all providers, but I'm saying in general. But once, epidurals became popular. I want to say epidurals were first really introduced in like the 30s, 40s, but like became popular around the 80s. Um, it became a thing where, on TV they show the woman in insane, excruciating pain, and labor is this thing that has to be fixed with an epidural, and you have to go to a hospital. And there was just a big shift in the way people talked about labor and birth. It was almost like it was something traumatic that it's a part of life, but you got to go to the hospital and you got to be fixed with an epidural, and then you'll be fine, But around that time is also where we started seeing a rise in C-sections. And with any type of surgery, you also add the risk of surgery on top of just the risk of birth in general. I mean, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because I will talk. Okay, I will talk. But, the more we try to get better by, implementing things that we think will fix, the problems of, shoulder dystocias or stalling out in labor and then adding Pitocin, but then ending up with, babies who don't tolerate Pitocin, and then you end up in stat C-sections. And it's all these things that have added to why the United States, while we spend so much on healthcare and birth in this country, we have some of the worst outcomes in the world. And it's insane. But when you look at other countries who still use the midwifery care model, they do better. They do better. And that's not saying that, OBGYNs aren't amazing. They have a lot of amazing OBGYNs that support vaginal births, natural births, and just allowing your body to be your body. But it's a snowball effect once you get into the hospital. And I've seen it. I've seen people have to fight not to become, a statistic within that, where, you're laboring, you want to come to the hospital because it's your first baby, you're nervous, you've seen all these things, but you just want to come into the hospital. You get to the hospital, you get put on the monitor, you're there, you're only 2 centimeters, so they want to speed it up because you got to think about it. It's a business, it's a hospital. They don't get paid if you're there for 3 and 4 days just laboring. You're just holding up a room. So let's speed it up. Let's break your water. Let's add some Pitocin. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's push for 4 hours. It's so many things that start to happen when you get to a hospital that a lot of people don't even notice because it's become such common practice that you almost set yourself up not to have a physiologic birth once you're admitted to the hospital. So, I say all that to say we have evolved in medicine, but I feel like we have definitely gone backwards when it comes to birth in this country and the way we care for women and birthing persons in pregnancy, in labor, and definitely postpartum. I will not speak on postpartum today because that is an episode all on its own, but we do such an injustice to women and their families when we provide monthly, bi-weekly, and weekly visits during pregnancy and are very much on top of things during pregnancy. We very much focus on labor and birth. That's what you're looking for. And then figure it out, I'll see you in 6 weeks. That's a problem. Like, we know most of the things that'll happen as far as like postpartum preeclampsia, postpartum depression, issues with lactation and breastfeeding. All of those things happen within like the first 2 to 3 weeks. And then by the time you get to your 6th week, you may be in full blown depression. You may have given up on breastfeeding. Things like that. Things just get missed because there is no focus on what happens after the baby gets here. So obviously we need to make strides with that. But I'm going to leave that where that's at. So why did I become a midwife? I am from a city that is predominantly Black. When you look at statistics, you can just Google New Orleans statistics. People of Black or African American descent make up over 55% of the population. I have worked within a couple of the major hospitals here. And when you look at the providers available to the majority, it's very few and far between. And it's not because there is a lack of eligible providers that want to and are willing to work in these situations. And I'm going to speak on my experience as a labor nurse, because it's not just New Orleans. It's not just New Orleans. But New Orleans is a city that is a majority of people of color. But I have worked in what I think this might be my 12th or 13th travel assignment. And I have worked maybe 2 assignments where the majority of the staff were people of color. Two out of 12. And I have worked everywhere from the South, Texas, Louisiana. I've worked in West Virginia. My first nursing job was in South Florida. I've worked in California, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii. And it is very interesting that within labor and delivery specifically, you do not see a lot of nurses or providers of color. And I don't want to sit here and talk about why that is, but it's just something to think about when you start looking at these statistics that's becoming bigger and bigger about why Black women and white women will go into a hospital setting in labor with the same issues or the same things going on, and that Black woman, just because she's Black, is 3 times more likely to have a bad outcome or die. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed. Do I think being the one Black practicing midwife within a hospital setting in this city is going to be the answer? No. I don't speak for all Black people. I don't represent all Black people. But do I think that I can see things just from my Black experience that other providers can't? I firmly believe that. There was a scenario, I don't know if I read it on a Facebook board. I don't remember where it was or where I heard it, but there was a scenario where a nurse walked into a Black patient's room, and the patient was like patting her head on multiple occasions, like patting her head. And without even discussing, that's another thing. Like, ask questions without even discussing with the patient, like, why are you hitting yourself in the head? What is going on? She wrote up a psych consult, basically saying she was like banging her head and she didn't understand, what was going on. And I think it's okay to not understand, but I think it's your duty, especially as a nurse or a healthcare provider, somebody caring for this patient, to ask questions and not write up a psych consult when sis probably had braids or tracks or something in her head and it itches. And we pat our head when it itches. And it was that simple to ask that question. And that's what I mean. That's what people mean when they say we need representation. And not just in the medical field. We need representation, period. Like when people talk about natural births or doulas or midwives, people are like, oh, like what white people do. And it's because, it's been a thing where access to midwives became limited to people who can afford to pay for them because insurance covers hospital birth. But within the past, few years or so, insurance started covering midwifery care. Not everybody can afford to pay out of pocket for a doula or a home birth or just midwifery care in general. It's just, it's insane to me that, I know Black providers. I know, Black nurses, and we just aren't represented well enough in these settings, and that needs to change. And I felt like it was such a disadvantage. I've been in situations working here in New Orleans where I've seen the disadvantages that, people of color face just because they aren't understood, nor do some providers want to understand. They're there for a check. They do what they got to do for a check. And they don't care that, they might be setting this person up for future issues by, giving them a C-section, their first baby, and then not telling them that there's the option to VBAC or not, it's a snowball effect. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, y'all. It bothers me. It irritates me. And why I became a midwife was to, do what little I could to provide what I can to everybody, but especially to people of color. Give access to people of color, to a person of color, to care for them during their pregnancy, labor, birth, postpartum, GYN care, anything. Just give people access. So that's why I'm here, child. So, real quick, phases of the womb I created because I saw that knowledge gap that people had about just pregnancy, labor, birth, postpartum in general. And, while I learned a lot of things in school, I wanted to impart that knowledge on other people. And, still, I get a lot of people that say, oh, I didn't even know, I had to, or that I didn't have to get an epidural. Like, I didn't know that I can have a midwife and have an epidural. I didn't know that, I didn't have to birth at home if I wanted midwifery care or doula care. I didn't know the difference between midwives and doulas. That'll be talked about on our next episode. But, I just wanted to bridge that knowledge gap. And whether or not it's on a small scale, I just wanted it out there for people to even have access to the knowledge where you don't have to pay $1,200 or $1,500 for, pregnancy education or labor education or just, just education about your bodies in general. I wanted to, provide that. And then last year, because I've been listening to podcasts more and more, mostly murder podcasts, thanks to my best friend because she's crazy and that's what she likes and she got me hooked. I've been listening to, I'm gonna just plug it, Morbid. That's my favorite. I love it. So that's what I've been listening to. Whether I'm in the car, in the shower, cleaning up, whatever. And I was like, I think it'll be a good idea to provide not just these Instagram videos that I provide on Wednesdays sometimes, because we know I'm not consistent with that. I be trying, y'all. I really do be trying. But social media, it be draining me. It drains me because you got a plan and yet neither here nor there. I'm going to get it together, I promise. But I felt like, having something that can play in the background or something you can play while you're breastfeeding or something you want to listen to while you're on the treadmill or for a walk or in the shower or cleaning up, something that's just available, that not only just gives this education from my perspective, but I wanted to combine the fact that I've met so many people just from traveling. Like, I went to school in Miami, so I have friends of different, races and ethnicities that have gone through labor and birth or that, work in the medical fields in that area. Or I went to nursing school in New York. I have friends in New York. I have experiences in New York. And then just traveling as a travel nurse, I've, encountered so many different people and so many different perspectives that I wanted to share, whether it be, one of my friends' birth stories or just having a chat with a nurse practitioner or a doula or OBGYN or another midwife. I just wanted to make sure, I provide everything I can provide to people that, if you take one thing from one podcast or one Instagram post that makes you feel empowered and, less traumatized in your birth setting, I felt like I just wanted to be able to provide that. So that's who I am. That's what I do. This is what I want to provide. And obviously, I'm always open to, critiques and comments and, concerns. If, you had such and such experience and you don't understand why, and you want to hear about, what normally happens or what should happen in these scenarios, or, what you should have asked or what you should have done, hopefully I can find a way to provide answers to that. And I don't know everything. I'm not out here providing you medical advice via podcast. That is not my job. So don't be out here saying on this podcast, Sarah told me to tell you. No, don't do that. I don't know your situation, so don't do that. But I just hope I can provide some knowledge or at least give you a basis to go do your own research, because I always tell people, you are the expert on your body. I know some stuff. I'm the expert in my field. You are the expert in your body, and it is your duty to know what's going on with yourself. And it is your provider's duty to care for you. Your provider works for you, not the other way around. You let your provider know what you want, what you think They give their recommendation, but at the end of the day, it's your body and your care, and you need to know that, and you need to remember that. And yeah. So I want you guys to make sure y'all stay tuned, because I have so many amazing talks with so many amazing people coming up. And I want y'all to be there to catch it. So tune in on Fridays on your favorite podcasting app. And I'll be releasing an episode each Friday. I don't know how many episodes I'm going to do a season. I don't know how many breaks I'm going to take yet. We just going to kind of go with the flow and see what happens and go from there. And if you have any questions, just make sure you follow my Instagram page, and that is _ phases of the womb. Womb is WOMB. Sorry, y'all. I'm looking to make sure I'm spelling stuff right. So _ phases, PHASES of the womb. You can message me, follow me. I also do Womb Wednesdays, which is a brief video just of me discussing a topic, what I plan to do. And we all know I always say what I plan to do on Womb Wednesdays, and that changes. But what I plan to do is kind of speak on a topic that I touch on the Fridays podcast. So like if I'm doing like an introduction video and talking about midwives and statistics in this podcast, then the Wednesday prior to this podcast would be a video of me, like a brief 3 to 5 minute video, me giving some statistics, me going over what a midwife is, giving some background, and just giving you a little snippet and posting it on my feed. So that's what the plan is for that. You can also email me with any comments, concerns, questions, anything at phasesofwomb@gmail.com. I don't know why Phases of the Womb was taken, but it was. So it's PHASES of WOMB@gmail.com. I'm working on my website. So once that's finalized, I will be sure to post that and give y'all access to that. So I am so looking forward to what is going on right now. I love that I'm able to just run my mouth via podcast. So I hope y'all stay tuned, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.